Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today we've got another episode of Creatures That Should Be Legendary. Now in episodes like these, I tackle creatures that should be legendary but for various reasons. Some of these creatures might have been a mistake and should have been legendary but weren't labeled as such. Others make sense to be legendary based on lore or other circumstances. And then there's just some that I wish were legendary because they'd be fun to build around. Creatures like these I tackled in part 3, so if you haven't seen that yet, go ahead and check it out. And that's actually what today's episode is going to be focused on. Creatures that I wish were legendary because they'd be fun for a deck. Keep in mind with these kinds of episodes that they're just my opinions. Also keep in mind with this list that I actually don't want Wizards to go back and reprint these, and I don't want the rules committee to change any rules. I just think it'd be fun to think about. Also remember that you can use any creature as your commander as long as your playgroup's okay with it. But make sure that you have that discussion first with them before you go ahead and buy that deck. You should not be going in with the assumption that everyone's going to be okay with this. I made sure to ask my playgroup before I went and built Inktrader Nephilim. Communication is key for a healthy playgroup, and this is no different. And with all that said, let's get into it. Today's first commander that I wish was legendary is Femrith Enchantress. She's quite an old card from Vision, so I'm gonna read her Oracle text. She's a 1/2 human druid for green and a white, and she has whenever an enchantment is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So enchantresses generally work in the opposite way of this. Most enchantresses say something along the lines of whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. But instead of caring about enchantments being cast or come into play, she cares about enchantments going into your graveyard. That can make for a very unique build. And on top of that, not only does she care about your enchantments, but she also counts your opponent's enchantments too. As a commander, Femrith Enchantress could be an incredible value engine. In Selesnya, there are plenty of enchantresses, so you can run those as well and get benefits off of those enchantments coming into play as well as them leaving. But again, because she is your commander, you do want to focus on those enchantments leaving play. Enchantments that can sacrifice themselves or other enchantments can come in huge. So some cards that you might want to consider for this build are Fauna Fertility, Unbridled Growth, and Cleansing Meditation. Fauna Fertility has pay 1 and a green, sacrifice Fauna Fertility, search your library for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So this is an enchantment that ramps you, but with this deck it's also going to cantrip when it hits your graveyard. And then Unbridled Growth has Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and sacrifice Unbridled Growth, draw a card. So essentially this can help you fix your mana when you need it to, but most of the time with this deck it's just going to be a 1 mana draw 2 cards. And then Cleansing Meditation can be an absolute bomb in this deck. It's a sorcery that says destroy all enchantments, but if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, instead destroy all enchantments, then return all cards in your graveyard destroyed this way to the battlefield. The amount of enchantments they're going to be sacrificing, threshold should be very easy to get for this deck. So first you're going to destroy all enchantments, including your opponents, and you draw a card for every single one of those enchantments destroyed this way. And then you're going to get all of your enchantments that you just destroyed right back. So this draws you a ton of cards, sets all of your opponents back, and doesn't really affect you at all. You're going to be at the same spot that you were just at, but with a lot more cards in your hand. I feel like this commander allows you to use a lot of cards that otherwise don't see play. Much like Feather did for many instants and sorceries, this could do for a lot of enchantments that otherwise don't see the light of day. Overall, I think this is a unique and different direction that you could take an Enchantress build. Many Enchantress decks play out the same, focusing on casting enchantments or then coming into play. But this one focuses on the opposite and gives you a unique new approach. I don't think that Femrith Enchantress would be too powerful as a legendary creature, and I think it would be fine to build around. But again, make sure that you ask your playgroup or people at your LGS before you try to do so. The last thing that you want is to build and buy a deck that you can't use. But now let's move on to the second creature today that I wish was legendary with Drog Skull Reaver. It's a 3/5 spirit with flying, double strike, and lifelink that costs 5 white blue. It has whenever you gain life, draw a card. So if Drog Skull Reaver were legendary, it'd be a pretty high cost commander at 7. But it's a decent enough threat and that effect is fantastic and definitely worth that 7 mana. There really aren't any other commanders out there that have this kind of effect. It allows you to take a unique approach on a life gain build. The payoff for gaining life is drawing a card, and that's definitely worth it. Keep in mind that you're going to need separate instances of life gain to trigger this multiple times. Even if you gain 10 life at once, that's great, but you're only going to draw 1 card. If instead you gain 1 life 10 times, you're going to be drawing 10 cards. So the more repeatable ways that you have to gain life, the better. So if Drog Skull Reaver were a commander, some cards I would consider to be Sun Droplet, Words of Worship, and Hero's Blade. Sun Droplet is an artifact for 2 that says whenever you're dealt damage, put that many charge counters on Sun Droplet. At the beginning of each upkeep, you remove a charge counter from Sun Droplet. If you do, you gain 1 life. So basically, once you've taken some damage and gotten some charge counters on Sun Droplet, you're going to gain 1 life each turn. And then thanks to your commander, that also means you're going to be drawing 1 card each turn. So with just one trip around the table, you're going to be gaining 4 life and drawing 4 cards. That's a very good deal for an artifact that just costs 2 mana. And something like Words of Worship can actually work very well in this deck as well. It's an enchantment that has to pay 1. The next time you draw a card this turn, you gain 5 life instead. So this won't really draw you any more cards, but you can use this to gain an incredible amount of life. When you go to draw a card, you can just pay 1 and gain 5 life instead. When you gain that life, your commander is going to trigger and you're going to draw a card. Instead of drawing that card, you can pay 1 to gain 5 life again. That's going to trigger your commander again, and so on and so forth. Essentially with this in your commander in play, whenever you've got extra mana lying around, you can just gain an absurd amount of life. And finally, even something like Hero's Blade can be useful in this deck. It's an equipment that says equipped creature gets +3/+2, and whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. Basically, when Drog Reaver comes into play, it's going to be a 6/7 with double strike. This turns Drog Reaver into a 2-shot kill. Now, Voltron definitely doesn't have to be the main win con for this deck, but it definitely can be a part of it. Basically, any equipment that can give +3 would work. Drog Reaver would make for an interesting commander because it gives life gain decks a different direction to go in. For the most part, gaining life in commander isn't that powerful of a thing, but drawing cards while you gain life could definitely be powerful. I don't think that Drog Reaver would be broken as a commander, especially with that mana cost. But as always, if you want to build around it, check with your playgroup first. But now let's move on to the third creature for today that I wish was legendary with Maelstrom Archangel. She's a 5/5 angel with flying that costs Wooburg. She has whenever Maelstrom Archangel deals combat damage to a player, you may play a non-land card from your hand without paying its mana cost. So I've actually seen a decent amount of people who agree that this one should be legendary. It's a 5-color creature that has that very powerful effect and it just seems to be legendary. Again, today I'm not arguing about lore or making mistakes, I just think this would be a fun one to build around. With flying, you can probably get through on at least one of your opponents. So being able to basically cast one thing for free each turn could be huge. And because this triggers on player combat damage, you can abuse that as well. So if you give her double strike or you take extra combat, you're going to be getting multiple triggers each turn. That's going to allow you to cast more things for free each turn and let you go off more quickly. So outside of ways to give her double strike and spells that give you extra combats or extra turns, let's go over some spells that might work well with her. First off, you want something that can clear the board, so something like Angaric's Wake could come in huge. It says destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. So this is going to slow your opponents down on top of helping you get your commander through again. And then something like Amonatu's Augury can come in big as well. It says exile the top 8 cards of your library, you may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until end of turn for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. Basically, that's a whole lot of text that says you can cast a lot of things for free. And when you're casting big broken spells, you definitely want cards that cast even more big broken spells. You also want some cards that get the exact right cards in your hand. Conflux is probably the best among them. It says search your library for a white card, a blue card, a black card, a red card, and a green card. Reveal those cards and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. This can basically get you the 5 perfect cards to set yourself up to win. One might be an extra turn spell, one might be an extra combat spell, and so on and so forth. Now this kind of a Maelstrom Archangel build is definitely reminiscent to my Joda build. That doesn't mean that you have to build in this kind of a direction, you can definitely take her in a lot of different ways. Even just cheating out some big creatures like Worldspine Worm can be very powerful. I very much feel like Maelstrom Archangel definitely feels like a legendary creature though. It's a very powerful and unique effect that you don't see too often. And because she'd be a 5-color commander, she gives you a lot of different options to work with. But as always, ask your playgroup first before building around her. And again, if you don't have a playgroup, ask those at your LGS. But now let's move on to today's final creature that I wish was legendary with Emberwolf. Emberwolf is a 2/2 wolf with Intimidate that costs 1 red-green. It has other wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1. And non-human werewolves you control can't transform. So essentially if this were legendary, it would be the perfect werewolf commander. It pumps both your wolves and your werewolves, but more importantly, it doesn't let your non-human werewolves you control transform. So essentially once they become a werewolf, they're stuck being a werewolf as long as this is in play. And for the most part, you always want your werewolves to stay on their werewolf side anyways. Many people out there have wanted to build a werewolf tribal deck, but there really aren't that many great werewolf options as legendaries. No offense to Ulrich, but it's not that great of a commander for the deck. If it were legendary, Emberwolf would be a much better option. So with this kind of deck, of course you want a ton of werewolves like Gyrereach Bandit. It's a 3/2 human rogue werewolf with haste and says at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform Gyrereach Bandit. It transforms into Vildan Pack Alpha. It's a 4/3 that says whenever a werewolf enters the battlefield under your control, you may transform it. And then at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells last turn, transform Vildan Pack Alpha. So basically with this in play, your werewolves already come into play transformed. And as long as Emberwolf stays in play, they're never going to change back. Outside of werewolves, you're also going to want some tribal spells like Howlpack Resurgence. It's an enchantment that has flash and it says each creature that you control that's a wolf or a werewolf gets +1/+1 and has trample. So it's an additional anthem effect on top of your commanders and it gives your creatures trample. It not only pumps them, but it helps you get that damage through. And then Moon Mist says transform all humans, prevent all combat damage that we dealt this turn by creatures other than werewolves and wolves. So this is basically a one-sided fog effect that transforms all of your humans. Again, there are many people that want a werewolf commander, but there just aren't too many great options out there. Emberwolf seems like a fantastic fit for this tribal deck that really hasn't got the help that it needs. Wizards might tackle this one at some point and give us a legendary werewolf that's worthy of its name. But for now, asking your friends if you can run Emberwolf might be your best option if you want a werewolf tribal deck. Again, Ulrich might be legendary, but Emberwolf is definitely the better option of the two. But if your playgroup isn't okay with something like Emerald as a legendary, you can always try something like Morofon instead. Again, you definitely shouldn't be going in with the assumption that everyone's going to be okay with this. So communicate and do your best to make adjustments if you have to. But now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, tell me which creatures you wish were legendary. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck tags. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tag dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.